Broadcasting live from Youngville, North Carolina and Ontario, Canada, this is Got Mead Live, a weekly show where Vicky Rowe and AJ Airmans bring you the mead news, meadery info, and mead-making discussions from all over, talking with mead makers, mead owners, industry mavens, and influencers. This is Got Mead Live, a weekly podcast about mead and the people who love it and where the mead world is going. And now here are your hosts, Got Mead owner Vicky Rowe and mead and wine maker AJ Airmans.
Live from the den of the puppies of the apocalypse, Ryan's Pad in Denver, Sydney down under, and the Bunny Pen in Ottawa, Canada. It is Got Mead Live. Welcome to the show. Tonight we're sending out massive waves of support to Manny, who was in Miami Beach. He and his family weathered the storm in a shelter and now back home. There's no power, but also very little damage, so he's doing just fine cleaning up the mess. Today we're talking with Ryan Carlson about yeast. Before we get going, what are we drinking? I believe Vicky has a Moonlight Meadery Indulge. How's that looking tonight, Vicky?
Looking pretty damn fine. This describes itself as a sweet but not overly so, and it is reminiscent of a cinnamon bun. Yeah, it tastes like somebody squeezed all the juice out of a cinnamon bun and put it in this bottle. It is amazing. It is nicely sweet. It's on this. It's halfway between sweet and semi-sweet, and it is so smooth you would not believe it. It'd be really, really easy to drink way too much of this. It's very, very good. So if you are okay, you can get any Moonlight Meads on VinoShipper, vinoshipper.com, and name of this one is Indulge. You want it. Trust me.
You can even get it in Australia here, so get onto that, guys, if you're after it. So today am just on a Coke. It's a lovely sunny 30-degree day here, so just having a Coke while I'm at work. Manny is, of course, probably having himself a Guinness tonight after a long day's cleaning up. AJ is having a Bun Ratty Mead. Now, tell me, what is a Bun Ratty Mead?
Well, it's made in Ireland, and a friend of mine brought it home for me when he was vacationing there. And it claims to be mead, but when you go and read the label, it's actually a white wine that's had honey added to it. It's quite pleasant. I'm enjoying drinking it, but I'm not sure I would really call it a mead.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. It smells really nice, and it's got a good level of sweetness without being cloying, but I don't think it's a mead. But it's tasty.
It is tasty. But yeah, you're right. Not a mead, but tasty. I mean, it's all right.
In my experience, the UK definition of mead quite often varies down to that. And tonight, also, Ryan is having structured water because he's got a bit of an upset tummy. Tell us about this structured water of yours, Ryan.
Well, so it's water that has been alkalized or alkalinized. I'm not sure how you would say that properly. But I think it's supposed to be almost 7% or 7 on the pH scale, and so I'm drinking that tonight. So we started drinking mead about 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday to judge the Orpheus Cup, and we did that all Friday night until late into the morning, and got back up the next morning and drank until 9 o'clock that night, and so I'm kind of washing out my system a little bit, I hope.
How many meads did they end up with at the Orpheus this year?
I think there was maybe 40-some for the professionals.
Nice.
And there was 130-some for the homebrewers.
Fantastic. That's
great. We didn't have enough judges, as seemingly we very rarely do, and we had to judge an awful lot of meat on Saturday. And as you guys know, that's hard work.
It's
people
hard
think,
work. Yeah.
How lucky for you to sit around and drink meads all day. It's really...
It's not as easy as you think it is.
No.
It's not. It wears you out. By the end of the day, you've worked very hard, and I just hope that our listeners appreciate how hard the mead judges do work at the competitions that you guys send your stuff into.
I generally don't drink mead for 3 months after the Mazer Cup because I'm so burned out on it. I'm so meaded out and overdosed, which is a bummer because the parties are where all the really I mean, sure, there's a lot of really awesome stuff in the competition, but you don't know whose it is, which is the way it's supposed to be. But at night, you've got, Bobby Slants and Carvin and everybody bringing out all of their special meads that they've brought. And, by then you're
Some of which is not in the competition, so you
right,
wouldn't have gotten a taste.
You're right, exactly. It's your only opportunity to taste it. And then you're like, oh, my palate is, so tired.
I took two cases to the Mazer Cup this past year to share with everybody.
I'm hoping that I'm going to have a couple cases to bring. I'm planning on doing a whole series of. I've got all these bits of herbal teas that I've gotten over the last couple of years from Teavana and local tea shops, and there's things like blueberry lemonade and all of that. And I'm going to do a whole series of 1-gallon batches on the tea with a light honey and see what happens. I'm really curious, and besides, I'm not drinking this tea, so I need to do something with it. My husband keeps going, get any more tea and I will kick you out of the house. So, and so I'm going to do that. Plus I'm going to do a chai one with my favorite chai. And, I'm just going to do a whole pile of tea meads and see what happens.
Very good, very good. Well, if you're listening to this, you already know how to hear us, but you might not know that you can also listen live on the Got Mead website. If you're on a mobile or want to listen later, you can check us out on iTunes, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio at tunein.com. Just search for Got Mead Live. Replays all the way back to the beginning of the show are available at gotmead.com, Spreaker.com, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher Radio. Again, just search for the keyword Got Mead Live. We now have a show player on our Facebook page at facebook.com/GotMead. Come check it out. You can find us at Facebook. It is facebook.com/GotMead and facebook.com/groups/GotMead. Twitter at GotMead now. If you can't call us tonight, just tweet us at GotMead now, and we'll get your questions out to Ryan. Making Mead back to basics. Check the links on gotmead.com and call in tonight to speak to us on 803-443-MEAD. As you know, we are all volunteers here, but this show does cost us money, keeping the machines and all the gear running. So please become a supporting member at gotmead.com. It's only $30 per year. You get access to much more on the patrons member site, all the recipes that the patrons have put up there, and as well as supporting us and keeping this show going for as long as we can keep it going. So now, leading up to Ryan, what are we talking about tonight regarding yeast?
Well, so it's always hard to know how far we're actually going to get. I'm sorry for everybody for taking way too long last week, but we've already spoke about briefly how to decide on a particular strain of yeast that you want to use, the parameters that would lead you to one thing or another, and that probably didn't seem very specific for people, and I kind of wished I could have offered more information, but it's kind of something you just have to kind of dive in and do to really learn it. Then we talked about pitch rates and why it's important to pitch the proper amount of yeast. Tonight, I'm going to speak about actual rehydration protocols and what we want to do to get our yeast off to the best start that we can do. So many times on some of the social media pages, I see people having problems with their stuff, either taking off to begin with, or it stalls in the middle, or it doesn't run all the way out to the alcohol tolerance that it should. And almost inevitably, every time I see this, and we ask the people, well, what did you do? And we find out once they tell us everything they can that it's almost always human error. So I want to go over some of the things that we can do to make our yeast the absolute most happiest they can be when we send them off to do their thing. And so that is actually rehydration. And then we're going to talk about aeration, which is very, very important. And so we'll talk about the O2 additions and how much the yeast really would like to have in best case scenarios. And then we will probably end up speaking about the different phases that the yeast go through once they actually start on their journey to the end result. And so we're going to look at rehydration, aeration, O2 additions, and the different phases of fermentation. So to get that going, this is our first time that we have a direct impact on taking care of the little guys, our yeasts. And the better that we can take care of them, the happier they're going to be. The happier they are, the happier we will be at the end of the day, because when yeast are not taken care of, and there's many ways to not take care of them, they stress out and they create off flavors, as we know, are fusols, and it's then these fusols that need to be aged long term to try to make all that stuff better. The thing is, though, you can never take a mead that's been really wounded with unhappy yeast. Yes, it will get better, but in my opinion, and people may choose to argue, and that's fine, but I don't think that you can ever truly age those problems out entirely. It seems like they leave a footprint behind, even after you've let them age indefinitely. And so it's very important. This first process of rehydration is very important, because if we do it right and give our yeast everything that they need, which is the biggest place I think people fail is they don't realize how important rehydration is. So there's different ways to go about it, and oftentimes on the internet I see people doing things that are actually hurting their yeast more than they're helping. People like to just dry pitch their yeast on top of their must. And yes, we've heard of people, and some of you guys that have been doing this much longer than I have, you've actually done that, and I understand that it works, but it's really not the best thing for our yeast. And as we get into what's going on during this rehydration process, you're going to understand a little bit better. I personally like to use a Lalvin product called Go Firm. I think there's another product called Pro Start out there that I know some of the guys like to use. I've always used the Go Firm, and I'm happy with it, and so I just stick with what works for me. And I also use Fermento for our food. A lot of people think that you can't use just Fermento because they think that they're missing some of the micronutrients that our yeast desire to be happy. But the fact of the matter is that if we use Go Firm along with our Fermento, the Go Firm preloads all of the nutrients that our yeast require to be happy when we rehydrate them. And so we really have a huge opportunity to get our yeast off to a great start. And here's why. When we get the yeast, they're dry, and when we put them in water, they start to unfold, just as if, those kind of those aluminum balloons that you can buy at the store for people's birthdays. You guys can all imagine those, right? When they're folded over, and then when they start to inflate them with the helium machine, they start to unfold, and eventually they'll swell up. Our yeast are actually doing the same thing when we first put them in water, and that's why the yeast manufacturers tell us that we want to rehydrate at 104 degrees. This is very important. This is the first place that you can screw up. If you're going to use Go Firm, you want to use the Go Firm at 1.25 times your amount of yeast. And so, for instance, if you're making a small batch and you're using 5 grams of yeast, you want to use 6.25 grams of Go Firm. Or if you were using 10 grams, you'd use 12.5 grams of Go Firm. They say to use 200 times in weight the amount of water. So if we have 10 grams of yeast, that's 12.5 grams of Go Firm, and we want to multiply that by